So all web proxy rules have a standard format. In terms of the rule order, where does this rule, when you add it, sit within the ordered list? All rules are processed top-down, first match. The admin rank is a definition of which administrators can manage this rule. So administrators of equal or lower rank can manage those rules. The rule name is a definition of the rule. It's a free-form name for your rule as you enter it. And whether the rule is enabled or not is the status. And then the predefined labels can be mapped onto those rules. So a rule label is a static definition that's previously been defined by an administrator, whereas the rule name is a free-form one that might be created by the user that's creating that rule. Within SSL inspection rules, you're going to make decisions based upon the data inside the encrypted tunnels. The URL filtering rule is based upon the HTTP header or the SNI. For file type control, you have the magic bytes, the extension, the MIME type to identify what is a file type. The sandbox is going to understand what the content is to make a decision to hand files off to the sandbox. And for data loss prevention, we're going to look at the content type to make decisions. We may also make rule expiration decisions. So how long does this rule exist for? So it might only come into effect at a certain time and it might expire at a certain time. So we can have temporary rules for certain conditions. An example of this might be that there's an announcement by the government and we want to prioritize that over all other rules and make sure that it doesn't saturate bandwidth. Or it might be a sporting event where you know that's going to happen and you want to deprioritize that over all other rules. So let's take a look at the criteria. For the web proxy rules, the criteria are relatively similar. So what URL categories is it going to apply for? Which users, groups, and departments is it going to apply for? Those are logically ORed together. The locations or the location group. The fixed locations, and then Road Warrior is a default undefined location. So anything that isn't a known location is classed as Road Warrior. The request methods, whether it's an HTTP connect, a post, a delete, and what time does this apply? What protocols does it apply for? And what user agents does it apply for? And these might be ANDed together. And then the device types, whether they are Zscaler client connector, are they coming from isolation, or can we see from the operating system types? So within all of those criteria, we define them, certain criteria like user or group or department, but they are ANDed together across each of those segments to make a criteria that will trigger for that rule as it's processed. For data loss prevention rules, the criteria extend to include the DLP engines, as well as the cloud application information, the file type information, and a minimum size for that object to trigger on. Again, the user, group, department, location groups, and time and protocols all apply, but the protocol can only be HTTP or HTTPS or native FTP for this rule to trigger. The actions, again, are relatively similar across all the web proxy objects. We can either allow the transaction if the criteria are met. We can caution if those criteria are met. The user needs to acknowledge that caution page, and that caution page will be the default caution page if the redirect URL is empty, or it can be a custom page that the user needs to acknowledge. The same with a block message. If the criteria are met, the user will be displayed a default block page or a redirect to a custom block page. You may also have block with override. So you're going to block the request if the criteria are met, but you're also going to allow the user to override that block message through a new authentication mechanism. So a good example of this is where Zscaler is deployed in schools. You want a default block page, but you want the teacher to be able to authorize the override of a rule because of certain class conditions or their own judgment. And then the final one is isolate. For whatever reason, we want to move the user from accessing the website directly to putting them in an isolated container before allowing access. So that might be a data protection requirement, or it might be a user protection because of the category of the website, or we've made a decision based on traffic flow to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to isolate based on previous conditions we've seen and dynamically isolate the user from the website. With bandwidth control, if you define bandwidth classes already in the resources section and apply these to locations at certain times of day, we can then guarantee a minimum percentage of the bandwidth or cap for that class the maximum amount of bandwidth that can be consumed by that class.